Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends. This week we're going to look at the Modern Masters 2015 set reveal and how it impacted some of the cards in Modern. And as always, we'll look at some of our big movers in Standard as well. So let's jump in and look at our top three Standard cards that have lost value this week. And number three is Sarkhan Unbroken, and he's down to 12.65, losing $1.97 this week, which is pretty substantial. However, I think this card is probably bottoming out at this point around 1265. This is a card that is not seeing a whole lot of constructed play, obviously, but it's an awesome commander card, great casual card, awesome cube cards. So there's a lot of places this card can fit into the game. But now that more packs are open, a lot of those players, like commander players, for example, are only looking for one-ofs or maybe foils of a card like this. So the values, I think, pretty much bottomed out here at 1265. I don't see it going a whole lot lower because there's still a little bit of demand for this guy, and he is a planeswalker and he's pretty flashy. So this might be your chance if you want to grab a copy or two to do so. Number two is Dragonlord Atarka, and he's up at 1840, but he did lose $2 this week. I think this is just normal stabilization for him. I don't think he's really going to go much lower. He's still seeing a lot of standard play. I believe he's going to continue to see standard play. Green is a very strong color right now in the metagame. I don't really see that changing too much, but there are other options out there. A lot of decks are going with Ujitai, so because of that, Dragonlord Atarka has seen maybe a little bit less play in the past week or two, which is probably why we saw the drop as opposed to a gain. But again, I think this card's not going to go too much lower than where it is now. And our number one biggest drop for Standard this week, again, is Narset Transcendent. And there's just so much hype around this card through the pre-release time. They were selling Narset for $50 a lot of places, and since the set came out, it's just steadily been dropping. Now down to $22.61. This week she lost another $2.12, and she's seeing a little bit of standard play, but it almost feels kind of fringe. So I don't think this drop is over yet. I think she's going to continue to go down. I wouldn't be surprised to eventually see her down to where Sarkhan is around the $12-15 mark, unless something changes in the metagame, maybe with the release of Magic Origins that makes her more viable. I think she's going to continue to go down. So if you want to get some copies of her, I'd probably just hold off for another few weeks. Now let's take a look at our top three standard cards that have gained value this week. And number three, probably no surprise, is Dragonlord Ojutai. And he's up to $37.49 with an increase of $1.90 this week. And simply, the reason is he's all over the meta game in Standard. There's decks running him that are control decks. There's decks that aren't even white and blue that are running him. They're just splashing because this card is that good. So whenever there's a number of decks in the meta game that are looking for the same card, especially the Mythic Rare level, you're going to see values like this. Now, I think he's kind of reaching the top of his curve. $40 in the $40 range is a lot for a standard card. I don't see it going too much higher than that. However, it is a very fine card, and as long as there's still a demand for it, I think it is going to stick around that $40 range. Now, a lot of times when a card is very popular in Standard, there seems to be a hoser card that shows up in a subsequent set, so that could happen and could shake his value a little bit. If you're waiting just to pick up some copies and you don't need it for a standard deck, like maybe you just want one for your cube or something like that, this is probably not a good time to buy. I think he's really at the top end of his curve. Maybe wait a few months, see how the metagame evolves, and I'm sure there'll be some value at least coming off of him. Number two is Dem Protector, and he's up to $9.14 with an increase of $2.56 this week. I was very surprised this card was as low as it was through the release of the set, just because it's basically Eternal Witness, and that's a very powerful card. I think people are starting to kind of see that now, and they're starting to find a place to put it in Standard in some of the green decks. And now that that has been discovered, there's been a nice increase, bringing it up to around the $10 mark. Now this has just shot up recently. You might be able to still find and trade for copies out there for maybe the $5-6 range until people really notice what kind of impact this is going to have on Standard. If you can do that, I would do so, as I think this card is going to continue to go up before it stabilizes. And our number one biggest mover of the week is Death Mist Raptor, $25.94 with an increase of $3.01 this week. Much like Ojutai, this card, it sure is great in green decks, but you know what? It's being played in non-green decks because of its ability allows it to do so. So again, you have a lot of cards, a lot of decks in the metagame that are competing for this card, and that's going to drive its value. I think it's going to continue to go up before we see this drop. It may even stabilize somewhere in the $30 range, but it's going to be a really high card for a while. Again, if you don't need it for a deck, this might not be the time to pick it up. You may want to wait later into the cycle of the standard, and at some point, I think it will start to decrease again. Now let's take a look at the top 3 modern cards that have lost value this week, and probably not a ton of surprises here. First is Dark Confidant from Modern Masters, and this is down to $54.04, but a drop of a whopping $12.50 this week. And this is kind of the trend we're seeing in a lot of these cards that are being reprinted in Modern Masters 2015. This one took a pretty big hit, and at least in your top 3, I think you're going to see cards that of course, are being reprinted in the new set, but also are seeing a little less modern play than maybe they used to, and Dark Confidant kind of falls into that category. Next is Tarmogoyf, and it's down to $171.74, and that is a loss of $13.75 this week. And we're looking specifically at the Future Sight one here. However, the Modern Masters one also took a very similar loss and is up around the $175, $176 mark. So they both have seen a loss this week. This one just saw a bigger loss, and just seems to be players continue to gravitate more to the newer art for the Modern Masters one as opposed to the Future Sight one. But still, $171 is nothing to kind of turn your nose up at. This is still a really expensive, really good card. I do think in the case of this card, it's going to drop more. I'd like to hopefully see it down to the, if we're fortunate, maybe the 120 range. It'd be great to see it go to 100 or below again. Realistically, maybe $130, $140 is maybe more realistic. A lot of it's just going to depend on how much Modern Masters 2015 product actually gets out there. I've heard a couple different rumors. One that obviously the first shipment is completely allocated, but Wizards has promised that there'll be more Modern Masters 2015 than the original Modern Masters, and I have heard rumors that it's going to be treated like Conspiracy, where after the initial run, there'll be more opportunities to order quite a bit of product potentially. So we'll see what actually happens with that. Now, if it is treated like Conspiracy, then yeah, Tarmogoyf could fall under $100. So my advice is if you're in the market for these cards, wait it out definitely over the next probably 3 to 4 weeks, see what happens with the market value. It's going to continue to drop when the set drops, and if it is true and there's going to be a lot of this product, it will continue to drop into the life of the set. And our number one biggest drop this week in Modern is the Ravnica version of Dark Confidant, for all the same reasons that we talked about the previous one. This one's at $55.07, which is a few cents higher than the Modern Masters version, but pretty comparable. But it did lose a whopping $13.96 this week. Again, I think Bob's going to drop a little more before this descent is over, and if Modern Masters has a relatively limited print run, he might get down to the $40 range. If it turns out that the print run is stronger than we initially thought, it could go down maybe even to the $20 range. Again, much like Tarmogoyf, this is not the time to buy. He's going to continue to slip. Give it a couple more weeks before you try to get your copies of Dark Confidant. Okay, now let's take a look at the top 3 Modern cards that have gained value this week. And number 3 on the list is Den Protector. So much like its huge value gain from Standard, of course it is also a Modern legal card, so it is one of the biggest movers in Modern this week. $9.14, up $2.56. Most of this again is being driven by Standard. Number 2 is Blood Moon, and particularly the 8th edition saw the most value increase, and it might be because it was lagging a little behind the others with a white border, but it is at $25.40 with a $3 increase. And here's a good example of a card that we found out is not being reprinted in Modern Masters that is starting to see an increase. So any of those big cards that we thought were going to be reprinted. So you're thinking things like Blood Moon, Goblin Guide, Serum Visions. This is probably the time to pick them up before they start to rise out of control. Even things like Filter Lands, if you need those. I think these are things that are going to continue to rise now that a lot of collectors are going to feel like it might be another 2 years before we get another shot at a Modern Master set to get these cards. So probably the best time to buy. Finally, we're looking at Death Mist Raptor again, which when you saw the $3 in one set increase in standard probably was no real surprise. Again, this is mostly being driven by standard. It'd be interesting to see though if this card does find a home in modern. It is very powerful and it very well could. I wouldn't be shocked at that, but again, it is valued at $25.94. So, having said that, that is our look at MTG Finance for the week. And thanks as always for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.